Now, in this week's Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we're going to be taking a look at the results of, and your comments from, the poll that asked the question, of all of the Star Wars content due out later this year, which are you most excited for? And jumping right into the results, we'll see that nearly half, or 47% of the 25,000 voters, said Season 7 of The Clone Wars, with another 15% saying Episode 9, and 9% saying the game Jedi Fallen Order, and 8% saying The Mandalorian, which left 21% of people saying they honestly weren't interested in any of it. And there are quite a few interesting takeaways from this, not the least of which is that The Clone Wars beat Episode 9 by more than a 3-1 margin. And yes, as usual, I'll make the disclaimer that these results might vary greatly if another YouTube channel, a more pro-Last Jedi one for example, conducted the very same poll, though I do think The Clone Wars Season 7 is going to have a very, very strong showing no matter who would put this up. However, what might change is the number of people not interested in any of this. Nevertheless, it's still interesting that some 5,000 people who likely are, or at least were, huge Star Wars fans, or big enough fans to find my channel at some point, have no interest in any of the upcoming projects. And they're certainly not the only 5,000 fans who feel that way, which, honestly, it's just a shame. It's so sad that so many fans are losing or have lost interest in Star Wars, and are sticking around to some degree either because they don't or can't give up all hope, or they just want to watch it all crash and burn. And as I always try and say, people can feel however they want about the current state of Star Wars, from absolutely loving all of it to completely loathing all of it. You're entitled to your opinion and entitled to express it. I personally find myself enjoying some aspects of the modern or Disney era of Star Wars, and being disappointed by others, and sometimes greatly disappointed. And as rationally as I can, I've tried to lay out the reasons why I've been disappointed by some aspects and why I've enjoyed others. And that's one of the things I'm going to continue to do with this channel, give you my honest opinion on things, for good or bad. As well as with videos like these, try to let you express your views. In fact, I greatly enjoy doing these videos, and I hope you enjoy them as well. And going forward here, I'm going to be extensively covering these 4 projects, not to mention anything else that gets announced or any other type of news that might break. And I'll be doing it as fairly and as unbiased as I can, and after they come out, I'll give you my take on them, and you can give me yours, and we'll go from there. And yes, of course, I'll also be doing many other videos, or types of videos, and I'm always open to suggestions on what you would like to see out of me. Anyway, just wanted to give you all a heads up on the direction I'll be taking the channel in. And now I'll stop rambling, and let's get to the comments, starting with the top-rated one, which came to us from Mania Lord of Insanity, who said, "The new Clone Wars season honestly feels like they are trying to listen to the fans now, after the backlash of The Last Jedi and flop of Solo, and that's a step in the right direction for me." And, well, as I've said before, I'm not entirely sure the Clone Wars Season 7 was a direct result of the failure of The Last Jedi and some sort of effort to appease the fans, or if it was something they've had planned all along. Anyway, I think the way they handle Episode 9, or the way the movie goes, I should say, will go a long way in telling us how much they're listening to the fans. And mind you, a lot of fans liked Episode 8 and liked Episode 7 just fine, and want to see that story continue. So, really, what they have to do is blend what people who like the movie want to see with those who hated the movie, and I'm talking about Episode 8 mostly, and try to make something that appeases all fans. And that could end up being a disaster, or it could end up uniting the fan base. Only time will tell. Alright, moving on to the next comment then that comes to us from Year-Long Giant, who said, "Clone Wars Season 7, obviously. I trust Dave Filoni because he is like a son to George Lucas and understands what Star Wars is while others do not." And yeah, I've always said Filoni was like a Padawan to George Lucas during those Clone Wars years, and who knows the things they talked about? Who knows the things George Lucas told Dave Filoni about Star Wars that no one else has ever been told? So I would love to see him be put in charge of story development. Now, I'd love to see him be president of Lucasfilm, but who knows how much he knows of the business side of things. Alright, moving on now to Steve Carter, who said this. "Don't comment very often, but I had to for this. Clone Wars is the only one I'm really interested in, due to it needing to be finished, but it's also the one I'm most worried about. If they treat it like they have the main series, then Star Wars could be finished for me, which I never believed I would say." And first, let me say thanks for commenting this time, Steve. Second of all, I've always wanted to see the Clone Wars flow directly into Episode 3, which we're finally going to get. And last of all, I don't think Dave Filoni will let this fail. I don't think Disney is stupid enough to tamper with this and risk pissing off even more fans, but who knows. Alright, next up now, a comment from Josh Hillfer who said, "Come on, even if you hate the sequels, aren't you all a little bit interested to see how Abrams finishes the trilogy?" Now, not to question the resolve of anyone who said they're completely done with Star Wars, but I'd imagine most people are curious on some level about how this will all end. Moving on to a comment now from Captain Phoenix who said, "I may be in the minority, but I just want Disney to succeed. I want them to make a good Star Wars movie and blow me away. This is their last chance to do it, and so all my cards are for Episode 9. And yeah, I've said it before, and I'll say it again here. All I want is good Star Wars. I don't care who makes it happen or how. If that's Kathleen Kennedy, so be it. If it's someone else, then let's get them in here already." And yes, I've talked about Kennedy before. I'm personally not sure she's the right fit. I don't know how much she has passion or love for the franchise, but she's currently there, and if she can find someone like Dave Filoni to put him in charge of story development and they can work together and make this franchise great, then that's fantastic. Make it happen. Next up now, a comment from Lion Guard Elite who said, "All of the above. So hyped, what a year." And you know what? If all of these 4 projects, and even Season 2 of Resistance, which somebody pointed out I didn't put on this list, anyway, if they're all fantastic, then you know what? It could be one of the greatest years in the history of Star Wars. Or if it all goes wrong, well, this might be one of the last years in the history of Star Wars. Alright, let's now move on to a comment from Martin Brody who said, "I hated The Last Jedi and always will. In my opinion, it will forever be a stain on the franchise. For almost a year after it, I wasn't looking forward to the final chapter at all. The way Johnson ended it, I'd lost all interest in what would happen next. But now, for whatever reason, I'm fully back on board with the hope that JJ, fueled with a positive fan service mentality, will shrewdly and successfully bypass Johnson's mess, picking up the plot threads he tantalizingly laid down in his mystery box approach in The Force Awakens, and deliver a cool as frick Star Wars movie that'll be the least divisive since Return of the Jedi. A tall order maybe, but I'm very open to the possibility, and I am genuinely excited for Episode 9. And you know what? I like the positive attitude, and as I've said before, I thought Episode 7 was exactly what it needed to be, a welcoming back to Star Wars. Now, did I think it was a fantastic movie on a personal level? No, but it's good. And I was interested in the mysteries that it laid out, which then got ignored in Episode 8. So if 9 goes back to those mysteries and answers them well, this trilogy, yes, it could still end relatively well. Alright, next up, a comment from Obi Wan Kenobi who said, "It's a sad, sad day when I'm more excited for a TV series over a new movie in the saga that allowed such a TV series to exist in the first place. Maybe it's because post Last Jedi no longer feels like the saga I grew up loving. Maybe Clone Wars, the derivative creation, is all we have left from the golden age of Star Wars." And I get exactly what you're saying here. The Clone Wars feels like the last piece of George Lucas's Star Wars that will finally now be finished, and that is exciting and somehow sad at the same time. Alright, now let's get to a comment from Michaela J, who said, 2 words, Thrawn treason. And yes, I'm also very much looking forward to this, though obviously there wasn't room for it on the list. We'll get the return of Director Krennic, who I thought was fantastic in the book Catalyst and was fine in the movie Rogue One. We also get the return of Eli Vanto, and, well, more Thrawn. You just can't go wrong with that, especially when it's written by Timothy Zahn. Alright, now, next up a comment from Ronan Salith, and I hope I said your name right. Anyway, he said, "Jedi Fallen Order has been in development for 5 years and is by Respawn. It's gonna be good." And though we don't really have many details on it, though we should get plenty of them at Celebration in a couple weeks, I too am excited for this because it's about time we get a really good Star Wars game again, because the last 2 Battlefront games have been fine if you like that sort of thing, but I want something more story-driven personally. Okay, next we have a comment from my Discord server, and it comes from Argobot the Headless Mando, who said, "I have huge hopes for The Mandalorian. There is a point where this could be the absolute best Star Wars we ever get, or it's just going to be perfectly meh. The directors, producers, music guys, it all points to something very interesting. The Clone Wars will be fun to see end, but we know more or less the road it's going to travel. Hopefully they can nail every episode. But man, The Mandalorian is uncharted, and I'm just so hyped for it. I love that set photos and images for it in general are so sparse. Here's hoping the Headless Cantina makes a cameo," and he's of course referring to the name of my Discord server. Anyway, I think he's absolutely right here. The Mandalorian has a ton of potential, and there are a lot of talented people attached to it. And when you figure that this is the first Star Wars show that they'll be putting up on their streaming service, they're obviously going to want to make it as great as possible to lure in and keep as many Star Wars fans as they can. That then brings us to a comment from Coach Nick, who said, "The Mandalorian. I'm 44 years old and hope the show can provide an interesting vehicle for Star Wars to develop intelligent, mature themes with its original audience." And I'm right there with you, Nick. I hope the show is more adult-oriented. And don't get me wrong, the majority of Star Wars should always be kid-friendly or kid-accessible, but there's nothing wrong with giving a show or two that is more mature and more intended for the older crowd, of course. Alright, let's now get to a comment from Chris Monell, who said, "Honestly, all of them, but if I had to say number one, it's Clone Wars. That series is the reason I like Anakin as a character. What the prequels at times mishandled was made up for in that show." And I absolutely agree. The Clone Wars is the perfect complement to the prequel trilogy. Alright, let's now get to a comment from J.A., who said, "Sorry, not trying to be a downer, but I'm just not excited for any of these. I would like to see the Clone Wars as long as I didn't have to watch it through the Disney streaming service." And this was a complaint echoed by a great many people, that the Clone Wars Season 7, and a lot of new Star Wars content, to be honest with you, will be behind a paywall. Alright, let's get to a few more comments now, starting with this one from Adam Longdon, who said, "I'm in the category that hated The Last Jedi, but I'm also really excited for this movie, because for me, every movie is its own." And yeah, I agree with that. Episode 9 could be a great movie. It could be the Revenge of the Sith of the sequel trilogy, or a movie that is superior to the previous two. And don't get me wrong, I do like The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, but Revenge of the Sith is a much better movie. Alright, next up we have a comment from Thomas Chimes, who asks, "What about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at the Disney parks?" And you know what? I really haven't kept up too much with all the information coming out about it, and I know it opens up soon, actually. And probably I'll end up going there for my honeymoon next year, and if I do, I'll no doubt make some videos or do some reviews on it. But until then, I'm probably not really going to cover it all too much, though people can certainly be excited for it. Alright, last up we have a comment from Posing Loki, who just says, "Avengers Endgame." And that'll take me right into my brief closing here, because yeah, I think if I'd included Endgame on that list, it would have gotten quite a few votes, maybe even one, who knows. And look, I love Marvel, I love the MCU, but it's still a little disappointing that Star Wars is losing to it, and probably losing badly. In fact, if you're watching this now, my next poll will already be up, and it will simply ask the question, which is winning, Star Wars or Marvel? And I'll be leaving it up to your interpretation as to what exactly that even means, or what standards they should be judged by, which of course, you can tell me in the comments, and I'll discuss them all next week. Well, that's all I've got for you this time, and now it's your turn to let me know which of these you're most excited for, or what you think about what I or anyone else had to say in this video. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.